For some time now, I've been thinking about, I like to discuss things. I'm a big talker. I love to have conversations and stuff. And a lot of the time in life, I'm not really offered the chance to talk about some of the things, that I think about, which mainly, one of the things that's always in my mind as a musician is rock and roll, my favorite records, and really I just don't really have a lot of people in my life who are going to discuss these things. So I started thinking, maybe I could discuss it, to the camera, and who the hell knows, maybe someone will find these videos and dig them. I mean, I performed a shitload of songs on this channel, so I thought maybe I'll try to keep it to rock and roll and what I love about it, etc. I already made one video. I'm going to post that, and then I'm going to post this one simultaneously. So today, what I wanted to discuss was I had been thinking the other day. I had been trying to introduce somebody to Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix. What was so significant about Hendrix to me was really what was happening at the end. Right before it ended, right before that story ended, sadly and tragically, that was one of the biggest tragedies in the history of rock and roll as far as I'm concerned, and I think mostly any fan of rock could agree. But what Jimmy was doing really at the end, I feel, was pretty innovative, and I really feel like he had a huge vision of what was to come in the future. He was so early with this. I feel like people still haven't totally grasped this, but for a long time now, I've kind of been tinkering away with the few tools I have at my disposal, desperately trying to craft songs, write songs, mostly all to my lonesome. I mean, anyone who watched my videos could see that. And Hendrix always particularly inspired me with this because towards the end, and in the documentary I was watching, it goes on to describe, and I had known this story for years, but Hendrix actually was putting all of his money, I guess, all his finances into a studio. I think he was built in New York, Electric Lady. I think he named it after one of his albums, Electric Ladyland. I think that was one of his albums. And, I think this was really innovative for one reason alone. I think today, as important as the live show is and was to the story of rock, I personally was always more moved by the records. It was the recordings that got me. I love later on as I, practiced more and became a better musician and, all these things, I started to develop more of an appreciation for the different ways someone in these bands perform the songs. A lot of people, but I remember vividly, quite vividly, when I was young, we would find a version of a song that was live. We were ticked off. We were happy with that. The thing that really struck people that I knew was the really one specific one-off recording. That's what people liked. They love that one version of Wild Horses, and they don't want to hear. Many people don't really care to hear the live version. This is just the God's honest truth. Many people are very attached to the one studio recording that was cut in 73 or 72 or whatever it is, whatever song it is, whatever song you like, And you see this more than anything, really, I feel, in hip-hop, because personally, I think hip-hop is a genre created for the studio. There's no better genre for the studio in many ways than hip hop. I never really felt like hip hop was the greatest genre for a live performance. I always thought those songs are perfect on the record, and live they just kind of, a lot of the time you read about these guys, they're just lip syncing at their live shows. That's how vital the record is to the fans of this genre. And I think this works a lot into rock and roll, because one of the things hindering the progress and innovation of rock and roll, I feel, is this idea that you have a band of four guys, four guys, a bass player, organ player, you got the guitar guy, and then you got the singer. And what happens is, when they're making their records, they never want to involve any other instruments many times, because they're thinking, well, I'm not going to be able to do this live. And imagine if this didn't exist. Imagine how many instruments could be used on the live recordings, and Hendrix saw this. Many times you'll read something about Hendrix and the way he went about recording some of those great records, and he's doing, this is in the time when, 6 tracks or 8 tracks, all that shit, they was very limited. I mean, I think the Beatles, when they started out, they were working with just 4 tracks. So now you go, it's 6 tracks, then are introduced, 8 tracks, and then 12 tracks. And Hendrix was flipping out during this period of history. He was flipping out, when he realized that he can do 12 tracks. He was utilizing every track to the best of his ability. And obviously, you can't recreate that live. That's something that can only be recreated. That's something that can only be created and captured on the record. 12 guitars of Jimi Hendrix. In one song. Legendary, absolutely legendary. So, this sort of thing, I feel, and this is the big shame. This is where all that piracy and all this comes in, because what we're having a hard time understanding is that, people say, well, the live show, that's where everyone has to make their dough. The fact is, though, we're living in this world now where mostly all media intake for most people, especially, people who, don't have a lot of money to throw around, or, fact is, most people just don't have a lot of time to throw around. So when you're thinking of these people, this is your audience. This is basically the audience that an artist is going to be looking for. He's not aiming... people who have all the time in the world to do things. It's a very small segment of the world's population. The people I feel an artist would want to reach are the ones who are going to be driving down the freeway in their truck and have 5 spare minutes to hear a song. I mean, people have a lot of responsibilities. They have a lot of shit to do. They don't have hours and hours to be listening to songs and traveling to live shows. This just isn't the average guy. Not every band is going to have an audience like the Grateful Dead. That's just not going to happen. I mean, that was a freak thing. Everybody's jumping in their vans and following the Dead around the country. I wouldn't be devoted to a band like that, and I love my bands. But that was a different kind of love that those fans had, different kind of adoration that they had for that band. So you're simply not going to find that with every band. And honest to God, some artists just shine on the record and totally, nothing special in the live performance. It's like an actor. Think of it like the actors. We don't hold a grudge against, Johnny Depp or, Johnny, he's right there. We don't hold a grudge against Johnny Depp or Marilyn Monroe or, Jack Nicholson, because they refuse, not that they refuse, but that because they don't perform on stage. We don't hold a grudge against them. Now, if they do perform on stage, we're going to go check it out. But we don't hold a grudge against them because they don't do this. And I feel that music is kind of, it's in that sphere. It's beginning to get in that sphere. Now, the live show is very special. It held the Stones together the whole time. It held all those early acts together. You look at someone like Chuck Berry. I mean, that's what he does. His live show. Dylan, live show. He loves the live show. And I think that's great. I think the live show is very special. It's very sacred, very ritualistic. I think it's very great to perform the same song time after time after time after time, because it comes like a prayer. However, I also think that these artists who are zoning in on the studio need to get more respect. And, there were many of these artists. You had Zappa. Zappa was a notorious studio freak. I watched things of his live show. It's give or take. That's my personal opinion. Give or take Zappa's live show. You listen to his recordings, this guy was flipping out. This guy was doing some genius shit. So every artist is different. That's what people need to understand. And some artists, the record. And Hendrix was a visionary in this sense, because he saw that at the time when the live show is everything. I mean, if you go back to the 60s and the 70s, the live show was the end-all, be-all of rock and roll. The records were important, but it's really only years later, I think, that the records came to be. They were almost just like promotional tools for the live show, and this is where I think the mistake is, because at this point in time, it's very clear that those records are not just promotional tools, and Hendrix saw these records, these are like paintings, so it's very important that artists are able to, capture a good record and do really whatever they please and be able to go all in, so I just think that's important. That's just my little rant, today. That's all I wanted to say. Just about the studio, and it's just where it's at, really. I mean, live. That's where it's at for me. In many ways. I don't know. It's hard to. It's just like spontaneous. I don't really know. I don't plan this thing out. I'm just kind of talking, But that's what I wanted to say. It's just Hendrix was such a visionary with that, and now you can even see Jack White. Jack White does the same thing. I mean, you look at a song like Icky Thump. That's a recording song. That is a studio song right there. You listen to it live, okay, he gets close, but on the studio recording, you're living in bliss. You're living in Wonderland right there, because that is just a studio song. He couldn't. He needed freedom in the studio to be able to create that. And that's greatness. I fully, wholeheartedly believe people will be listening to to that song and other songs that we know and love now. I fully believe they'll be listening to them in 600-700 years. I say that and think that all the time. And that's what's so special about the record. It exists after we do. And if you look at a lot of the great art from the centuries, that was why it was created, man. Because we're passing through. We can't hang out. We have 70, 80, 100 years, maybe less. We can't hang out forever here. But the records that we make, the art that we create, it can hang out forever. So, until it's destroyed, until the earth is blown up or something, So, and we've been trucking here now for about 4,000 or 5,000, if more years. And those old pyramids are still there, man. So, I think more, it's just more attention, more respect needs to be paid in the general culture. I felt and always have, felt, to the recording. It's worth something. It's worth a great deal. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.